Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today we were strapping in for a cosmological history unlike any other. We're charting a universe defined by fire, profound tragedy, and, well, the agonizing repetition of a single catastrophic mistake.
Yeah, it's quite a story.
Our sources lay out this vast, complex chronology that tracks the fate of a world caught between an infinite dark and a finite fading light.
That's exactly what we're examining. And this isn't just a history of physical events, It's really a metaphysical exploration of change, of pre-written fate, and maybe most importantly, of the ultimate cosmic fear held by the creator of this reality.
Right.
Our mission really is to track this cosmic cycle, moving from its absolute starting point of perfect stasis through the explosive birth of disparity and onward to an age of agonizing, inevitable collapse.
And to anchor us, we really need to establish the core principles immediately because, well, everything hinges on these definitions, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
The story begins in the Age of Ancients, defined by stasis and equilibrium. But everything changed with one spontaneous, inexplicable event. The emergence of the first flame.
The first flame. It didn't just introduce light or heat, it introduced disparity. And that's the central generative principle of this entire cosmos. The friction between opposites.
Like heat versus cold.
Heat versus cold, life versus death, light versus dark, all of it.
And the central defining tension, the one that shapes all subsequent history, is this conflict between the finite, rapidly consuming power of the god's light.
Which is Gwyn's power, essentially.
Gwyn's power, yes.
Yeah.
And the infinite, volatile potential inherent in humanity's darkness. It's a beautifully constructed tragedy, almost, where the very rules of existence seem to guarantee conflict.
It really is. The setup itself is the conflict.
Okay, let's unpack this primordial state then. Before history, before, well, time as we know it, there was the Age of Ancients. The sources describe a world that sounds, well, less like a planet and more like a physical metaphor.
Yeah, it's very evocative.
Perpetual fog, gray crags, and these colossal living structures called arch trees that ascend from, a watery abyss.
From a great gray lake, essentially.
What does this truly static existence imply about the state of being back then?
Well, the crucial definition here is the total absence of disparity. That's the key.
No opposites.
Exactly. Which means that concepts like movement, opposition, or decay simply had no mechanism to exist. Think about it. If there is no light, there can be no shadow. If there is no life, there is no death.
So everything was just uniform.
The universe was a singular, undifferentiated whole. This lack of friction meant there was no history, no progression, no reason for things to change. Time wasn't linear. It was a stagnant, unchanging eternity. Just absolute equilibrium.
So this wasn't just a pre-civilization period we're talking about. It was a fundamental, complete metaphysical state.
Correct.
But if change didn't exist, how did a war, which is inherently a disruptive act, how did that even become possible? What physical catalyst had to be introduced to break this perfect stasis?
Well, that is the essential mystery of the first flame, which we'll definitely get to. But the consequences of that mystery were immediate.
Right.
The war that ended this age wasn't fought over territory, like human wars. It was a violent imposition of the very concept of change onto a timeless universe.
Wow. So the idea of conflict itself had to be introduced.
By an external force, yes. The very notion of war had to arrive with the flame.
And the beings who embodied this stasis, they were the everlasting dragons. They weren't political rulers in the traditional sense, were they? More like physical extensions of the gray landscape itself.
Exactly. They're defined by their composition. The lore describes them as a mineral-based life form, sometimes half-living, half-element. It's fascinating stuff.
Mineral-based.
Yeah, and their immortality wasn't biological resilience, like regeneration or something. It came from their impenetrable stone scales. The scales were the physical mechanism that shielded them from the laws of disparity, the very laws that were about to be born.
That makes them fascinating. They existed before the concept of life and therefore before the concept of death.
They were permanence made physical, absolute stasis.
Wow.
And this is corroborated by a striking, almost philosophical anecdote you can find in the deeper lore. The remnant of the stone dragon found slumbering way down in Ash Lake.
I remember that.
It doesn't react to being wounded or attacked. It just sits there.
Implying what?
It suggests an existence devoid of pain, mortality, or even biological imperatives. They were silent, eternal, and absolute, and therefore entirely incompatible with the new reality that was about to dawn. They had to go.
Okay, so the stagnant world is shattered. We pivot to the ultimate zero-point event. The inexplicable, spontaneous emergence of the first flame, igniting deep beneath an arch tree root. Its origin remains the greatest mystery of this cosmos, right?
Absolutely. The greatest mystery, as the sources put it, yet its effect was total.
It was the true, violent beginning.
We have to understand the flame as more than just a fire, though. That's critical. It is a metaphysical Big Bang, instantly creating meaning by fracturing the monolithic static universe. It created the possibility of existence by introducing friction.
By introducing disparity.
Exactly. Light and dark, heat and cold, life and death, all born from that single spark.
The sources refer to this flame as the world soul, the dynamic generative force that enables motion and change. It's like the ultimate engine of flux and flow.
And this really explains the significance of the bonfires scattered throughout the world later on.
Ah, okay. Connect those dots.
They are small, individuated sparks of that world soul. They link the disparate parts of the fractured world and actually transcend space and time, essentially holding the new reality together through this pervasive dynamic energy.
So the bonfires are like physical nodes of change, tying everything back to the first flame.
Precisely. Little anchors in the storm of existence.
Now, drawn to this immense disruptive power, a few frail, hollow-like humanoid figures discovered the four Lord Souls, these metaphysical anchors of the new dynamic reality. Let's trace who claimed what, because these choices, well, they establish the entire cosmic hierarchy, don't they?
They absolutely do. You have the three great sort of static forces that emerged first. Gwyn claimed the light soul, becoming the embodiment of light and the sovereign of the sun. King of the gods, basically.
Gwyn, light.
Then the Witch of Islip claimed the life soul. She became the matriarch of life and heat, the source of flame sorcery.
Life and heat, got it.
And Nito became the first of the dead. He claimed the death soul, giving him dominion over mortality, disease, and decay.
Nito, death. So life, death.
Big concepts.
Immense, defining, and fundamentally static in their nature. Their power was absolute within their domain.
And then there's the fourth one, the anomaly, the being who is immediately overlooked, the furtive pygmy, described as diminutive and so easily forgotten, who claimed the dark soul. Yeah, the odd one out. And the acquisition of these souls fundamentally transformed the claimants. They didn't just wield power, they became the concept.
Right, Gwyn became the Lord of Sunlight. Nito became the Grave Lord.
Exactly. But the pygmy's transformation, though much subtler, holds the key to the entire future conflict. It's all about his soul.
That brings us to the unique nature of the dark soul, the source of humanity itself. Why was this soul fundamentally different from the light, life and death souls? What made it tick?
Well, the others were finite. They defined singular, powerful entities, right? But the dark soul was dynamic, generative, and fundamentally infinite in its potential. The pygmy didn't hoard it like Gwyn might have.
What did he do?
He shattered it into countless fragments, spreading it among the emergent race of men, creating humanity.
Wow.
The sources are very precise on this. The dark soul was endlessly divisible without diminishing the whole. It was self-replicating power, an endlessly growing potential.
Okay, wait. So if the god's power, based on Gwyn's light soul, was finite-like, it diminished when he gave parts of it away.
Exactly. Like he did with Seath and the Four Kings later.
The pygmy's power only grew the more it was fragmented and spread among humanity.
Precisely. Every human carries a spark, a fragment of that dark soul.
That is an existential threat to the established order, a massive one.
That's the crux of it, that metaphysical difference. Finite, structured light versus infinitely proliferating chaotic darkness became the root of the central conflict. Gwyn ruled a temporary kingdom of finite resources built atop an infinitely multiplying, uncontrollable force.
So that's the source of his profound, all-consuming fear.
Yes. The dark soul represents obsolescence. It represents the end of his age. It represents humanity's age.
So armed with this new deific power, the Lords launched the Dragon War. This was, as we established, the violent imposition of the new world of change onto the old world of stasis. It had to be a total victory, right? Like a cosmic eviction notice for the Age of Fire to even begin.
Absolutely. The mere existence of the dragons was an offense to the new order. Beings defined by light, life, and death couldn't coexist with pure timelessness. It just didn't compute.
But the dragons, shielded by their stone scales, were initially invincible, weren't they? They lacked a weakness that the Lords could exploit.
They did. For a time, it was a stalemate.
What broke that stalemate? What changed?
Betrayal. The critical betrayal of Seath the Scaleless.
Ah, Seath, the albino dragon.
Exactly. Seath was an anomaly. An albino dragon born without scales. Lacking the permanence of his kin, he was afflicted by something new, the mortal fear of death, and also, the sources suggest, corrosive emotions like envy and loneliness.
So he was, in essence, the first dragon susceptible to the laws of disparity. He felt things the others couldn't.
You could say that. His own vulnerability, his own difference led him to turn against his own kind. He revealed the secret.
Which was?
The stone scales, the source of their permanence, were vulnerable to the newborn power of lightning, Gwyn's power.
And that act sealed the dragon's fate.
Completely. The subsequent cataclysmic assault was a demonstration of the Lord's mastery over, well, conceptual warfare. It wasn't just about brute force.
How so?
Gwyn, wielding the light soul, used mighty bolts of lightning to strip away the scales, introducing vulnerability in the very concept of physical destruction to the dragons. He peeled away their immortality.
Okay, so Gwyn brought the thunder. What about the others?
They played their part in conceptually destroying the Age of Ancients, too. The Witch of Izalith used great firestorms, rooted in the life soul's heat, to burn the arch trees, the dragons' ancestral homes, the pillars of the static world. She burned their foundation.
Bringing life and heat to consume the old world. And Nito.
Nito, the master of the death soul, unleashed a miasma of disease and mortality. He introduced decay and sickness to beings who had never known it. Imagine that shock.
So the war wasn't just a military victory. It was a total conceptual annihilation. They imposed their reality onto the dragons.
Precisely. The dragons were stripped of their permanence, rendered mortal, and their world was consumed by the very forces of flux and change the lords embodied. The Age of Ancients was violently replaced by the Age of Fire. End of an era. A very, very long era.
Okay, so victory is complete. The Age of Fire dawns. Gwyn establishes his dominion, the great kingdom of Lordran, centered around that magnificent sun-drenched city, Anor Londo.
Anor Londo, yeah. Sitting atop the highest mountain, it was the radiant symbol of the gods' triumph. A real golden age, seemingly. Maintained by Gwyn's family, his children, Guinevere and Gwyndolin, and his elite 4 knights.
Ornstein, Artorias, Kieran, Go, the famous 4.
But it was a physically demanding realm to build and maintain. The sources tell us that the city's formidable structures, including the cleverly trapped Sen's fortress,
that place,
relied on the immense physical labor of giants. The gods' grandeur was quite literally built on the backs of others.
That's a recurring theme, isn't it? Hierarchy and control.
Very much so. And Gwyn also rewarded his key allies to maintain that order. Seath, the traitor dragon. He received the title of Duke and the vast archives for his research into immortality. A pretty good deal for betraying your entire species.
He got what he wanted, in a way. And Gwyn also gave power to humans.
He did. Fragments of his own Lord's soul were bequeathed to the 4 kings of the human city, New Londo. An attempt to integrate humanity, perhaps, or maybe just control them through obligation. He tried to build a stable hierarchy.
But while Gwyn was cementing his luminous kingdom, the furtive pygmy was quietly doing his own thing.
Yes, quietly enacting the proliferation of humanity by shattering the dark soul. Every human carried a sliver of that infinite, unstable potential. A power Gwyn could neither understand nor ultimately control.
And here's where the true narrative tension begins to coil, right? Gwyn, the Lord of Finite Light, came to profoundly fear this endlessly proliferating force of humanity.
Deeply, his response wasn't outright war, not yet anyway, but strategic control and suppression, containment.
His solution was the Ring City.
Exactly. It was presented as a gift to the pygmy lords and the progenitors of man, a beautiful city at the end of the world. But it was, in reality, a meticulously crafted, gilded cage, placed at the very edge of reality, almost outside of time.
And crucially, you mentioned a seal of fire was placed on humanity's ancestors there.
Yes, a great seal of fire.
What was the function of that seal? What did it do?
Think of it as a metaphysical suppression device. It was designed specifically to dampen and contain the terrifying growth of the dark soul within humanity, to keep it latent.
So it was meant to ensure that humanity's potential would remain dormant, posing no immediate threat to the Age of Fire.
Precisely. The Ring City is the physical manifestation of Gwyn's insecurity and his desperate attempt to deny humanity its own age. He couldn't destroy the dark soul, couldn't erase humanity.
So he sealed it away and basically pretended the problem didn't exist.
Pretty much. Out of sight, out of mind, or so he hoped. It was a denial of the inevitable, really.
But this golden age of Anor Londo, built entirely on fear and suppression, was inherently unstable because, as you said, it relied on the strength of the first flame, which was inherently finite. It had to fade eventually.
It did. And when did the cracks first begin to show in Gwyn's perfect veneer?
As the Age of Fire inevitably started to fade, The Lord's power diminished along with it. And the dark, which Gwyn had tried so hard to suppress, grew. Well, the sources say, unstable and assertive.
Like a pressure cooker.
Exactly. Leading to a series of cascading disasters that really demonstrated the fragility of his constructed reality.
The first great catastrophe being the spread of the abyss.
Right, striking in the human land of Ulasil.
How did the dark transform into this corrosive force called the abyss? Was it just the dark soul getting stronger?
It seems to be more complicated than that. It was manipulation coupled with ambition and maybe a lack of understanding. The dark-aligned primordial serpent, Kate.
One of the ancient serpents, okay. Yeah, one of the few beings seemingly outside the main conflict, pulling strings. He tempted the citizens of Ulasil into digging deep, into excavating the grave of the primeval man, Manus, who is very strongly believed to be the furtive pygmy himself, or at least his physical remains.
They dug up the pygmy. Why?
Pathé likely promised them power, knowledge, who knows. But the act unleashed the untamed, raw humanity that Manus embodied. His concentrated dark soul.
And Manus's untamed humanity erupted into the abyss. A corrosive, uncontrolled darkness that just swallowed Ulasil whole.
It proves the terrifying volatility of the dark soul when it's raw and unconstrained by purpose or understanding. It's pure, wild potential, but also pure chaos.
And this led to the tragedy of Artorias the Abyss Walker, one of Gwyn's 4 knights.
Gwyn dispatched his finest knight, Artorias, to stop it. But Artorias, despite his sacred covenant, his legendary will, supposedly allowing him to traverse the abyss, he was overwhelmed by Manus.
He failed.
He failed. The abyss, as a pure manifestation of uncontrolled dark, was simply too potent, too corrosive. His final desperate act, the lore tells us, was saving his loyal wolf companion, Sif, using his shield to protect her before he was entirely corrupted himself. A heartbreaking moment.
And rather than admit that the dark was too powerful, that one of their greatest heroes fell, Gwyn's regime immediately went into crisis control mode.
Of course. Damage control for the divine image. The official history of Lordran fabricated the legend that Artorias single-handedly repelled the abyss, made him an even greater hero in death.
Preserving the gods' honor by erasing the truth of their failure, covering it up.
And this is a critical pattern we see again and again. The Age of Fire is sustained not just by power, but by a pervasive lie, a carefully constructed narrative.
Meanwhile, the influence of the dark continued to spread. Catastrophe number 2 involved the 4 kings of New Lundo.
Yeah.
The human kings Gwyn had gifted power to.
Yes. Gaithi, that same serpent, wasn't done yet. He tempted them with the forbidden power of life drain.
Life drain, what's that?
Essentially the ability to steal humanity directly from others. A horrific power that corrupts absolutely. Their knights became the spectral dark wraiths, agents of the abyss operating right at the heart of Gwyn's kingdom.
Dark wraiths, right under Gwyn's nose.
Yeah.
So containing that specific threat required an agonizing decision.
A truly terrible one. A measure of the terror the abyss inspired, even in its agents.
What did they do?
It was a horrific cost.
Yeah.
3 figures known only as the Sealers made a pact. They flooded the entire city of New Lundo, drowning everyone inside, innocent and guilty alike, to imprison the fallen kings and the dark wraiths beneath the stagnant waters.
They sacrificed the entire city.
The whole populace, to contain the abyss. New Lundo became a drowned monument to the corrupting power of the dark and the desperate measures taken against it. To save the world from corruption, they had to condemn an entire city to death and eternal ghostly suffering. It profoundly underscores the severity of the threat.
Unbelievable. Okay, Catastrophe 3. This involved the Witch of Izalith.
Yes, the matriarch of flame sorcery. She saw the first flame failing, her own power waning, and in a desperate, perhaps arrogant display of ambition, she attempted to duplicate the first flame using her own Lord's soul, the life soul.
She tried to make a new first flame.
Essentially, yes, a replacement to sustain the Age of Fire indefinitely.
How did that go?
It failed, cataclysmically. Instead of a stable flame like the first one, she created the wild, uncontrollable, and corrupting flame of chaos.
Chaos, not order. Why?
The distinction is crucial. She tried to recreate the concept of fire using a piece of a Lord's soul, a soul embodying life and heat, not the primordial mystery that birthed the first flame. The result wasn't creation, it was pure monstrous chaos, nature twisting itself.
And she herself was transformed.
Horrifically. Into the monstrous bed of chaos, a grotesque fusion of roots, fire, and tormented life, the source of all demons. Her actions destroyed her own city, Izalith, and birthed a whole new race of monsters that plagued the world.
So all of Gwyn's original allies. Nito is presiding over death, Seath is lost in mad research. The witch is a monster. The four kings are drowned abominations. The attempts to sustain the Age of Fire only resulted in monstrous blight and failure for everyone involved.
Pretty much. It was all falling apart.
And that brings us to Gwyn's final, desperate, and defining act, the act known as the first sin.
Yes. Facing the overwhelming rise of the dark, the abyss, the chaos, the failure of his allies, the decay of his world, he acted out of that profound fear we talked about. He chose to reject the natural order of the cycle. He refused to let his age end.
So instead of accepting the inevitable age of dark, the age of man,
he traveled to the kiln of the first flame, the source itself, and he offered his own massive Lord soul, the soul of light, as kindling. He sacrificed himself to artificially prolong the Age of Fire.
he fed himself to the fire.
Literally. The consequence was immediate and tragic. He became the first Lord of Cinder, not a god anymore, but a hollowed, smoking shell bound eternally to the dying flame. Just fuel.
And his knights.
His loyal Silver Knights, who followed him to the very end, they were incinerated in the blast. Their silver armor was fused and blackened by the overwhelming heat, and they were bound forever as spirits patrolling the ruins.
So this act, this first sin, wasn't a solution at all.
Not even close. It was an act of deferment, a subversion of the natural order. It established a self-perpetuating cycle of sacrifice based entirely on his fear of humanity's destiny, his fear of the dark. He doomed the world to repeat his choice over and over.
And Gwyn's linking of the fire, this first sin, it had a profound and terrible side effect on the very race he sought to contain, humanity.
This is where the undead curse and the dark sign come in, right?
Exactly. The dark sign, that cursed circular brand of fire, begins appearing on humans whenever the flame starts to fade again, cycling down.
And it causes the undead curse, which means...
resurrection upon death.
Yes.
Sounds good, maybe, but it comes at a terrible cost. The loss of your humanity, those fragments of the dark soul, and your memories, your sense of self. Eventually, inevitably, leading to hollowing. Becoming a mindless, predatory husk. Just shambling remains.
Right. And let's zero in on the key metaphysical function of the dark sign here. It's not just a wound or a disease marker. The sources strongly imply it links humanity directly to the first flame.
How did that work?
As a human's humanity, those fragments of the dark soul naturally seep out or are lost upon death. The dark sign essentially burns them away as fuel for the bonfires, and by extension, the first flame itself.
Wait, so Gwyn weaponized humanity against itself.
It's the ultimate act of manipulation, isn't it? The very race he feared was turned into a slow-burning, long-term source of kindling for his fading age.
So the undead were imprisoned, feared, rounded up, left to await the end of the world, gradually losing the very essence of their soul, the thing that made them human.
And the psychological toll of hollowing must be just unimaginable. You don't just lose your life, you lose your purpose, your memory, your connection to the world, your sanity, until you are nothing but an instinct-driven shell attacking anything that moves.
The curse seems designed to isolate and break the will,
ensuring that only the most determined, or perhaps the most easily manipulated, survive long enough with their minds intact to fulfill the god's hidden purpose.
which explains why the undead were gathered in asylums, quarantined from society. They represent the failure of the Age of Fire, the decay.
Yet, paradoxically, they were simultaneously the only means of preserving it, thanks to Gwyn's system.
So to ensure that a powerful soul would always be ready for the next sacrifice, Gwyn and his remaining son, the illusionist Gwendolyn,
A master of deception, yes.
they concocted the legend of the chosen undead.
A masterstroke of propaganda. This fabricated prophecy was a sophisticated trap, a complete manipulation of hope for the hopeless undead.
The entire quest, ringing the bells of awakening, navigating Sen's fortress, finding the Lord vessel, it was all designed to guide the most powerful undead, the one who could overcome all these trials, right to the kiln.
Exactly. The goal was never to crown a new king, despite what the legend might imply. It was to ensure a fresh, immensely powerful soul would be available to link the fire and restart the cycle, just feeding the machine.
Buying the gods, or what was left of them, a few more centuries of existence, and the illusion was total.
Gwendolyn even created the ghostly, radiant image of his sister, Princess Guinevere, to inspire the hero, to give them the Lord vessel and the quest, all smoke and mirrors.
So the chosen undead gathers the fragmented Lord souls from the remnants of the old age, from the bed of chaos, Nito, Seath's archives, and the four kings in their watery grief. Once the Lord vessel is filled with these powerful souls,
The path to the kiln is unsealed. The final test awaits.
and in that final hollow space, after confronting the burnt-out, hollowed shell of Gwyn himself,
The first Lord of Cinder still desperately clinging to the flame.
the choice is framed by the two remaining primordial serpents, King Seeker Frampt.
The one who seems friendly, aligned with the gods, though maybe a bit toothy.
He urges the chosen undead to link the fire, fulfill the prophecy, become the hero, sacrifice yourself.
But then there's Darkstalker Kaith, the serpent who tempted Ulasil and Nulendo. He appears if you take a different path.
And he reveals the truth.
He reveals the truth of the gods' manipulation, calls Gwyn's linking the first sin, and urges the undead to usher in the Age of Dark, the true Age of Man, by simply walking away from the flame and becoming the Dark Lord.
Let the fire fade. Embrace humanity's destiny.
Right. But this raises the vital philosophical question that really starts to emerge in the lore as the cycles continue. Was the choice ever real freedom?
What do you mean?
The subsequent ages strongly suggest the narrative offered by both Frampt and Cathy might have been futile in the grand scheme. Whether the fire is linked or the darkness begins, the world seems bound to this greater, crushing cycle established by Gwyn's first sin.
So the choice only determined which temporary state the world would occupy next, which turn the wheel would take.
It seems that way. Either continue the fading lie or embrace a potentially chaotic, unknown darkness. Neither seems like a permanent solution. The cycle itself is the problem.
We absolutely must recognize the immense span of time that passes next. We're talking countless cycles. Lordran is lost to myth, replaced by kingdom after kingdom rising and falling.
Drangleic being the major one we learn about next.
Right. And the cycle established by Gwyn's first sin has become the world's grim, repeating reality. It's just accepted now.
And King Vendrick, the monarch of Drangleic, initially played the part assigned to him perfectly. He vanquished 4 new old ones. Powerful beings who had somehow inherited the fragmented remnants of the original Lord's souls.
Like echoes of Nito, the witch, Seath, maybe even Gwyn himself.
Exactly. Echoes or reincarnations holding vast power. Vendrick defeated them, gathered their souls, and founded his kingdom. He was following the script laid out for the chosen undead.
But Vendrick, and maybe more importantly, his twin brother, Aldea, the scholar of the first sin, they started to deviate, didn't they?
They did, a crucial philosophical deviation. They sought not just to perpetuate the fire or even just understand the curse, but to actually break the mechanism of the curse and the cycle itself.
To find a way out.
To find a way out, Aldea especially. His quest for truth led him down some truly horrific paths, making him a heretic to the traditional faith surrounding the linking of the fire.
What kind of paths?
He conducted grotesque experiments on giants, on undead, possibly on himself, trying to engineer a being outside of fate, entirely free from the binary of fire and dark that defined their world.
And the goal of that engineering was profoundly ambitious. You mentioned Aldea sought to recreate the timeless, elemental nature of the ancient dragons.
That seems to have been his ultimate aim. Why?
Why the dragons?
Because the dragons existed before disparity. They were outside the mechanism of light, dark, life, and death that governed the current age. If Aldea could somehow recreate that mineral-based, non-biological immortality.
He could create a new life form, immune to the dark side.
Immune to hollowing, immune to the pressure of the cyclical world. His path was radical, seeking existence outside of time itself, beyond the gods' control. A true escape.
But Drangleic's downfall wasn't ultimately from Aldea's experiments, was it? It was spurred by the Children of Dark. Specifically Nashandra.
Nashandra, yes. Vendrick's queen. Beautiful, seemingly loyal, but deceptive. She was actually one of the Children of Dark, fragments of Manus, the father of the Abyss, scattered after his defeat in Ulasil, and she was the weakest fragment.
The weakest. What did she embody?
Her defining characteristic, her driving force, was the raw, corrosive emotion of want, an insatiable hunger rooted in her own fragility and incompleteness.
And driven by this want.
She manipulated Vendrick, pushed him into a catastrophic war with the giants, ostensibly for power or security, but her real goal was to gain access to the throne of want.
The throne of want. That's Drangleic's version of the kiln, the conduit to the first flame.
Exactly, the seat of power where one links the fire or claims the darkness.
And Vendrick eventually realized her goal.
He did, perhaps too late. He realized she wanted to use the throne and his own immense soul, gathered from the old ones, not to link the fire, but to plunge the world into an age of dark under her absolute totalitarian control.
So, not the natural age of man that Kath spoke of, but an age ruled by the abyss's hunger. An age of want.
Precisely. A twisted version of the Dark Age.
So Vendrick's response, what did he do?
It was the ultimate defensive move against the dark, and perhaps against the cycle itself. Realizing the cycle was a trap and that the dark could be just as tyrannical as the light, he refused to play his part. He hid his soul, powerful enough to link the flame or start the Dark Age, away from Nishandra.
He hid it.
Yes. And then he sealed himself away, letting himself hollow into a giant, sorrowful figure pacing in the undead crypt. And most importantly, he barricaded the throne of want, putting powerful defenses in place.
She just opted out, refused to participate, denying Nishandra the means to twist the world.
He did. A profound act of passive resistance, born of immense regret and a dawning understanding of the trap.
And this sets the stage for the next protagonist, the bearer of the curse, in the Second Age we see. After defeating Nishandra, they face that familiar choice again. Take the throne, link the fire, or rule the dark.
The same old choice. But crucially, informed by Vendrick's refusal and Aldia's heretical philosophy, the search for a third path, a new option emerges, fostered perhaps by the Emerald Herald, a creation of Aldia's.
What's the new option?
The ability to simply walk away, to turn your back on the throne of want altogether.
Just leave.
Just leave. This act of conscious rejection, refusing to play the part assigned by the cycle, is arguably the first truly non-binary choice presented in the world's history. It represents a fundamental search for a path beyond the binary conflict.
Guided by the hope of finding a cure for the curse, achieving personal immunity to hollowing.
Perhaps it's a small personal victory over the curse, a refusal to engage with the grand destructive machine, a seed of doubt planted in the inevitability of the cycle.
Okay, now we jump potentially millennia forward again,
Right.
to the twilight of the world and the third cycle we witness. The first flame is barely a flicker now, and the state of reality is absolutely dire.
Dire is an understatement. The sources describe reality itself as fraying. The boundaries are breaking down.
Causing the physical lands of all the past lords of Cinderlordran, Drangleic, every doomed kingdom that linked the fire to literally converge, physically piling up around Lothric, the final kingdom we see. Like cosmic tectonic plates crashing together.
It's incredible imagery. The world has become a geological trash heap of failed cycles and collapsing realities. The drag heap, they call it later. The desperation of the gods or whatever forces maintain the cycle is palpable.
And the royal family of Lothric, seeing this end approaching, they tried the old way one last time.
They did. They tried to engineer a perfect heir. The twin princes, Lorien and Lothric, specifically bred and raised to be the next sacrifice, the ultimate Lord of Cinder.
But it didn't work.
It didn't. Prince Lothric, the younger one destined for the linking, was convinced by a heretical scholar, someone clearly linked philosophically to Aldia's rejection of fate.
Pontiff Silavon, perhaps. Or someone else influenced by the scholarship.
The connection is strong, yes. Lothric was convinced of the utter futility of the cycle and refused his destiny. He and his brother, Lorien, who shared the curse, chose to simply watch the fire fade from a distance, prioritizing their bond over the fate of the cosmos.
They just said no.
A royal refusal. And this triggered the final emergency contingency, the tolling of a great bell across Lothric.
What did the bell do?
It resonated through time, designed to resurrect 3 former Lords of Cinder from ages past to force them back to their thrones to link the fire again. Specifically, the Abyss Watchers, Yorm the Giant, and Aldrich, Saint of the Deep.
But even that didn't work.
Not entirely. The trauma of their previous sacrifice, the knowledge of its futility, was apparently so profound that 3 of them abandoned their duty entirely upon resurrection. They refused the call.
The knowledge had broken them.
Aldrich? Aldrich had devolved into a horrifying sludge, a devourer of men and even gods. He was consuming their essence, literally eating his way through the old gods in Anor Lundu when we find him, a complete perversion of his former sainthood.
And
Yorm the Giant sat lost in despair in his profaned capital, his sense of duty shattered by past betrayals. His fire was extinguished emotionally.
And the Abyss Watchers.
Locked in eternal combat against each other, consumed by the very abyss they swore to fight, corrupted by the wolf blood they shared. Only Lunlith of Corland, a tiny, seemingly insignificant figure who willingly became a Lord of Cinder long ago, remained on his throne.
So even the former lords themselves had given up on the Age of Fire.
Utterly demoralized.
Oh.
So the final, truly desperate contingency plan had to be activated, the absolute last resort.
Which was?
The resurrection of the unkindled, the ashen ones, us, the player character.
Okay, what are the unkindled? They're not chosen undead.
No. Their nature is quite different and frankly insulting. They are the remnants, the ash of those who tried to link the flame in past ages but were too weak. They weren't strong enough to become Lords of Cinder. They just burned.
They failed the test.
Utterly. They were burned to ash, unfit even to be cinder. They are not the prophesied heroes of the gods. They are a last resort collection mechanism. Scraps, resurrected specifically to hunt down the defiant lords who did succeed but refused the call.
So their mission is hunt the lords, slay them, and forcibly return their cinders, the essence of their souls, to the thrones in Firelink Shrine.
Exactly. The weakest are forced to carry the weight of the world on their charred backs because the strong refuse.
Grim, and the convergence of these powerful cinders, taken from the defiant lords,
Opens the path to the kiln of the first flame one last time, where the final confrontation awaits.
But this time it's not Gwyn, is it?
No, it's something more. The final guardian is the soul of Cinder.
The soul of Cinder.
The deific amalgamation, the living memory of every lord and hero who ever linked the flame throughout all the cycles. It embodies Gwyn, yes, but also all the nameless sacrifices, all the chosen undead, all the lords of Cinder, including the ones we just defeated. Their skills, their power, their lingering will, fused into one entity.
So the Ashen One fights the collective, terrible memory of the age itself. The weight of all that sacrifice given form.
Precisely. A truly epic culmination of the entire cycle.
But the journey doesn't necessarily end with the kiln this time, does it? There's more. The true finale seems to take the Ashen One beyond the collapsing present.
Into the dreg heap. That literal trash heap of collapsing world history we mentioned. And beyond that, somehow, lies the ringed city.
Gwyn's gilded cage. The pygmies' ancient prison, still maintained by an illusion of stasis after all this time.
Yes, it was maintained in a localized state of frozen time by the slumber of Philinor, Gwyn's youngest daughter, who he left there specifically to guard the seal and maintain the illusion.
And when the Ashen One awakens her,
the illusion shatters. Time catches up instantly. The ringed city collapses and the world is revealed in its true, final form. A vast, featureless desert of gray ash. Utter entropy. Eerily mirroring the age of ancients that started it all.
the cycle has come full circle, but in total decay, not equilibrium, dust to dust. And here, at the literal end of time, the Ashen One meets Slave Knight Gale.
Ah, Gale. A tragic figure. He had been on a desperate, centuries-long quest across the dreg heap and into the ringed city. Why?
To find something for his lady, a painter living in a painted world. She wanted to paint a new world, a safe place. And to do so, she required a unique pigment, the blood of the Dark Soul.
The blood of humanity's origin. So Gale.
To acquire this, Gale hunted and consumed the blood of the Pygmy Lords, the descendants of the furtive Pygmy still living hidden in the Ring City. The last vestiges of the original Dark Soul.
He consumed the Dark Soul itself.
Or its essence, concentrated in their blood. But the raw, infinite power drove him utterly mad. It transformed him into a monstrous primal creature, barely recognizable, crawling through the ash, seeking the final fragments of the Dark Soul, which he sensed within the Ashen One.
So the final battle isn't against a god or a lord, but against a knight driven mad by consuming the very essence of humanity's potential.
Exactly. The battle against Gale, who now embodies the consumed, raw, untamed Dark Soul in its most primal form, is the true final conflict of the entire saga.
And his blood, saturated with that primal essence,
becomes the blood of the Dark Soul, the final pigment needed for the painter. It allows her to create a new painted world, a potential sanctuary, born from the infinite potential of humanity, but maybe, finally, isolated from the decaying fire dark cycle of the outside world.
An escape. A radical reboot, painted with the essence of humanity itself.
Wow. Okay, so this colossal history, stretching across potentially millions of years and countless cycles, reveals a conflict defined by this impasse between two fundamentally flawed and unsustainable states.
Right. On one hand, you have the Age of Fire. It represents a tyrannical, decaying order built on Gwyn's first sin and requiring endless sacrifice. It leads inevitably to stagnation, hollowing, and eventual collapse. It's a gilded cage, but it's still a cage, and it's falling apart.
And on the other hand, the Age of Dark. It represents freedom, change, the true age of man, humanity's potential unleashed.
But, as we saw with the Abyss in Ulasil and New Lundo, and maybe even with Gale, it's inherently chaotic and volatile when raw and untamed. It's capable of manifesting as a corrosive, consuming darkness.
So the choice presented over and over is never really between good and evil.
Not at all. It's always between a decaying lie and a terrifying, perilous uncertainty. order versus chaos, but both are deeply flawed.
The endings available to the Ashen One in the third game feel like the saga's final philosophical thesis on this struggle. Let's break them down.
Okay, the perhaps weakest option is Link the Flame. The Ashen One fulfills the Unkindled's purpose, sacrifices themselves, but is presented as a desperate hollow gesture this time.
The flame is so depleted it barely catches. It implies this linking is the weakest yet, barely postponing the inevitable for maybe a few more years, not centuries. It's a moment of just fatalistic exhaustion, giving in to the dying machine.
Then there is the End of Fire, letting it finally go out. The natural conclusion, perhaps. Darkness falls. The Firekeeper cradles the last embers until they extinguish completely.
Is that a true end to the cycle, though?
Maybe not. Even in that ending, the Firekeeper prophesies that tiny flames will dance across the darkness, suggesting that the light, the principle of disparity itself, will inevitably be born again, even if it takes ages. The cycle might just reset on a much longer time scale.
And there's that deeply cynical, secret variation of the End of Fire.
Right. Where the Ashen One kills the Firekeeper in the final moments, stealing the last flicker of the flame for themselves, an act of pure, selfish ambition, not ending the cycle, just trying to control its last dregs.
Okay, so those feel like variations on the old themes. But there's a third major ending, the one tied to the Hollows of Lunder, the usurpation of fire.
Yes, the Lord of Hollows ending. This feels like the unique path, the one that truly seeks to resolve the cosmic conflict through synthesis, rather than just choosing a side or letting things end.
How does it work?
Guided by Uria of Lunder and the Hollows who worship the Dark Soul, the Ashen One undergoes rituals, embraces their hollowing through the Dark Sigil, and then, at the kiln, they don't link the fire, they absorb it.
Absorb it into themselves.
Yes. They pull the first flame into their own being, subjugating its power for humanity, using the strength of the Dark Sigil in their hollow state. They become a vessel containing both forces.
So this is presented as the only true method of potentially breaking the cycle, not by destroying the fire or letting it fade or walking away.
But by mastering the fundamental forces. The Ashen One becomes a new kind of lord, the Lord of Hollows, who unites the infinite potential of the Dark Soul with the finite, fading power of light, achieving a true, potentially stable equilibrium under human control.
That distinction between escape and mastery feels really key here.
It is. Vendrick and Aldia sought escape by trying to recreate dragon permanence, seeking existence outside disparity altogether. The painter seeks escape by creating a new, separate painted world, a sanctuary isolated from the cycle.
But the Lord of Hollows?
The Lord of Hollows seeks mastery within the existing reality by absorbing the very mechanism of the curse and the cycle into themselves, becoming the new engine of reality, driven by human will rather than divine fear.
So we've charted this incredible, depressing, yet fascinating universe. Doomed by its creator's fear, built on a lie, sustained by the suffering of the very people it sought to control. Every civilization, from Anor to Drangleic to Lothric, was just a foundation built on ash, destined to repeat the catastrophic choice of the first sin.
It's a powerful narrative. The whole Age of Fire was defined by light, which we established is finite and consumes itself and others. Humanity is defined by the Dark Soul, which is infinite and endlessly divisible, growing stronger as it spreads.
Right.
So if the Age of Fire required infinite sacrifice, countless undead burning their humanity just to sustain a finite light, does the ultimate solution, the true breaking of the wheel, lie in that usurpation ending?
Where the infinite potential of humanity finally absorbs the finite light.
Achieving a true, stable equilibrium, not by extinguishing the fire, but by becoming its absolute master, containing the conflict within humanity itself rather than being ruled by it.
That's a really powerful thought to chew on. Is the greatest freedom found not in running away, not in destroying, but in synthesizing the competing destinies, mastering the duality?
It's certainly the most ambitious possibility presented.
Thank you for joining us for this really deep dive into the cosmic chronicle of fire, dark, and the endless aching cycle. Lots to think about there. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.